It's February 3rd, Monday, first Monday in February, and Adam has a very full agenda for us.
I don't have an agenda. Are you talking about what I posted to the group? I was just some ideas.
Yeah, no, Adam, I have your email, up and ready, and we're just gonna,
Lord,
march right through.
sorry.
No, no.
I have ideas too.
I'm kidding. Um, anyway, and I've already lost Adam's email. Um, but the thing that I was going to ask, oh, here it is. Cool, cool. Um, Jeff, it's been a while since we've, had a show and tell from you about the 2068E, whatever we want to call it. So I'm gonna put you on the spot.
Jazz hands.
Yes, hands. Yes.
Maybe you can highlight him, David.
I did I
Oh,
have
did you?
him spotlighted.
Okay.
Okay. Hold on. I don't want to get people seasick here.
The shaky vision.
Yeah. The the Tim trademark shaky cam. So okay, so um okay, well, first there's the board as it exists right now.
Okay. And well, wait, hang on, Jeff. What are we looking at here? Talk
Printed
us talk.
circuit board.
Yeah,
I, oh,
everybody's a comedian.
you want specifics?
Yes.
Okay. So, all right. So what we have here is, and geez, I'm sorry about this, guys. The FPGA is here. It's a 20,000 gate FPGA with a fair amount of memory on board. Over here we have a 1 megabyte static RAM. This is a an audio stereo DAC, so that if you're crazy enough, you can have like two AY chips in your core.
Cool.
We have a PIC, or I'm sorry, a uh,
Pico.
thank you. Ugh, it's been a long day. We have one Pico that's responsible for talking with the SD card, and we have one Pico that's talking with a USB keyboard.
Okay.
We have two joystick inputs,
Yeah.
and let's see that. Oh, and then a VGA video output.
Okay.
So that's basically what's on the board. There's also room for a Pico W over here, but I haven't populated it for anything more than a little bit of testing. So
Cool.
the intent is that uh, you can load cores from the SD card. And here's an example. Right now, the system is booted up to. Wow, that looks like me without my glasses on. The heck?
It's expecting close focus for
I
some reason.
guess. Holy moly.
Hmm.
Oh, there we
There we go.
go. Sorta. Ah, man.
Maybe back. I don't know. Back up a little. No, that's not helping, is it? Okay.
No, it isn't.
It's in
No.
3D. It's in 3D.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
3D House of VGA.
Well, crap. Hmm.
So it says press any key to
Yeah. Well,
start.
press any key to start. So, in this
We,
particular case, what it's loading up is a menu of cores.
Okay.
Boy, gee. Ah, there we go.
there you go.
Let's hope it stays. And then you can just go ahead and select a particular core. I've been working on the 2068 core today, and it's not working yet, but here's an example of loading up a Spectrum core. And then this particular core has two different ROMs, and you can select one of the two. So um, it loads up the ROM, boots in, and starts the Spectrum core.
Wow.
And so that's like I said, I've been working on the 2068 core today, and it's been the bane of my existence. Um, I I'm still having trouble with my serial port to between the FPGA and the SD card Pico. So I'm not sure what the heck's going on there. Um,
Now, Jeff,
so
are these cores, are they being shared with like the Mister project or are they from the Mister project or what?
no, actually, they're not. Well, let me rephrase. The Spectrum core is shared with the Mister project, although I have to rewrite some of the core because I'm not using a 110,000 kilo gate FPGA with all this stuff in there. So, and then the 2068 core is a version that I've used before, but the problem is I'm adding a bunch of stuff on it, some memory mapping to allow you to use the 1 MB static RAM. So that's why it's taking a little while longer to get the 2068 core working.
Interesting. And you said your FPGA was how many gates?
Uh,
20K?
yeah, 20, it's like 19,000 something
Okay.
gates.
Okay.
So right now I'm using about a little less than half of the logic elements in there.
Huh. Huh.
So, and then one of the other things I've done is, and you guys saw this on Wednesday. I'm just going to grab the screen if you don't mind, David.
Yeah. Mhm.
So you should see. Oh, you probably don't need to see my VHDL. So this is a Python front panel that I coded up quickly to allow you to look at what's on the SD card uh, in the Pico. So it communicates via the USB serial, and it allows you to inspect, what's on the SD card. You can delete files and directories. You can transfer files from the PC to the Pico or from the Pico back to the PC. So, if you want to download tap files or whatever, you don't have to necessarily pull the SD card out. Although if you're moving a lot of files around, it's probably faster to do that. The main reason I put that in there is so that when you're uh, constructing cores, you can upload and download the FPGA files as well as any ROM files. The way this currently works is that um, the core, um, the way I'm doing it right now, the core has a little 8K ROM on board. It's actually 8K of RAM, and it runs a little program. All of that stuff that you saw on the screen when it was actually in focus, that's all on a little 8K RAM in the FPGA, and it goes out and reads the ROMs from the SD card into the static RAM on the board, so that you can download a bunch of stuff. So, for instance, in the case of the 2068, it would go out and read in that 24K of data from the SD card and load it into the static RAM, and then run it from there rather than onboard memory. However, having said that, the FPGA itself has more than enough memory to run a full 2068 just inside the chip. But I
The
wanted
RAM
to
memory
have,
stuff. Yeah.
yeah, so I wanted to have some options to allow you to use some bigger core with more memory.
Neat. Very cool.
Um,
And let's
You trying to
see.
figure out how to stop this? I think I can do that.
Oh, yeah, thanks.
There we go.
Let's see. And as I said, right now I've got almost everything working. I think I'm getting ready to completely rip out the UART that I'm using and find out what the problem is because it works on some cores and not on others, and I'm not sure what to do. Um, I've also been playing with Z88DK, which is a C compiler um, for well, primarily the Sinclair computers, but uh, after a little bit of futzing around, I'm able to write small sections of program for the FPGA as well. And you can also write, large programs, and I've done that as well in Z88DK. All of that menuing stuff I wrote in C. I have a version in assembly and a version in C, and I just wanted to see if it could be done. And as it turns out, it's pretty fast, both to write and to run in C.
Huh.
So
Assuming you know
that's
C.
what. Well, yeah, there's that.
That's a minor technicality.
Yes.
Cool. Awesome. So this will be ready what, next week?
If I can get this rats and frazen UART thing figured out, couple of weeks I should be able to have all this wrapped up and ready to ship out to the beta testers.
Cool. Very cool. An American, not quite next.
Not even close, but it doesn't cost as much as the next does either.
Indeed. Indeed. And it runs the right core.
Yes.
Yes. Very cool. Awesome. Thank you, Jeff. I don't think Francois is with us today. I don't see him. No. But Adam had asked, there's this high color hero
Yeah.
game. And Adam, did you say in the group that you had run it
Yeah,
in an
yeah, I
emulator?
ran it.
Okay.
Yeah, I ran it on real hardware. I ran it under emulation as a TS 2068 emulation, and it worked fine. But when I ran it on real hardware, and remember my system is a NTSC,
Yep.
it ran fine, but the colors were a little janky. And also, it specifically says it's not supposed to have bright black used in the game, and
Mhm.
bright black is definitely used on the same exact um, program. Like when I run it under emulation, it doesn't show bright black, but on real hardware it does. Not sure why.
Hmm.
And like if you play the game on the top and the bottom, it's showing off some of its effects. And while these work under emulation and they kind of work on real hardware, they don't look quite right. So I was wondering if anyone else has tried it on real hardware on an NTSC machine.
Well,
And
what
by the
has it?
way, I didn't load it from my Pico. I loaded it from a WAV file.
Okay. Okay. Um, yeah, Francois, I don't know what he loaded it from, but he has a Pico video board. I wonder if he noticed the bright black issue or not. Hmm.
Well, I was using it through Composite.
Oh, composite?
Yeah, which is what I'm
Well,
assuming most people would use it through.
yeah, true.
Yeah.
Most people. Um,
So it
hmm.
shouldn't like, of course, Composite can show, bright black,
Yep.
and
Yeah.
yeah, even when you don't want it.
Even if you don't want it, right?
Right.
Well, who programmed that? Is it somebody in Europe?
I don't know.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I
Adam,
believe they're in Europe.
Yeah.
I was just going to ask, could you try running that using whatever video board you have from me, either the FPGA or the Pico Video?
I mean, I can. The thing is, mine, and I think you have upgraded it so it shows 16 colors, right?
It should, yeah.
Yeah, m mine hasn't been updated to that yet. So you and I need to
Oh,
talk outside of this group, and maybe we can work that out. Because you sent me the programmer for it, but I never got to it.
oh, yeah.
So
Don't
yeah,
worry about that. So,
yeah, I can definitely test it up with that. If it works with yours, then in 16 color mode, then that would be awesome. But maybe I should give some feedback to the programmer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
Well, if it's someone in Europe, and they were programming using an emulator, then those
Right.
things.
They get what they get in an emulator. Like I said, it works okay in an emulator. So
Right, right. Um, well,
it still looks awesome. I don't know who's tried it even under emulation. It's pretty dang cool that there's that mode finally being used. Which brings us into, has there any progress been made on the high color paint program being tape sent to you?
well, I emailed David after our last meeting, and I haven't heard back from him yet. So I'm gonna assume that David's busy.
Yeah. All right.
He's probably got other things to do with his life, um, and that in good time it will come.
Sure.
Um, and for people just joining who have no idea what we're talking about, David Franson wrote a program back in 86, 87
I think he said
that
86 or 87. Yeah.
takes advantage of the um, high color mode in the 2068. And off the top of my head, if I recall correctly, this is a mode where you can set colors in a weird pattern. It's like 8 pixels wide by 1 pixel high versus sort of the standard, which is one giant block, one usually the background, the color attributes are 32 columns by 24 rows. uh, and you can, in the standard um, resolution modes, which is 256 by 192, like most other 8-bit computers at the time, you were limited in terms of the number of colors. Obviously, the resolution was lower. Timex, decided that they were going to add these modes that were not in the Spectrum. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm hoping, because I love, paint programs for 8-bit computers.
Yeah. It would also be a shame if it slipped through this opportunity slipped through our fingers to try to get it digitally archived too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Seems rather rare.
Yeah. So next on Adam's agenda,
Oh gosh.
which I really appreciate, Adam.
Oh, okay.
So Adam asked for a TS Pico update, and the update is um, there are, let me think about this. There are 3 steps, things that need to be updated uh, um, as part of the next version of the TS Pico software. And so the first thing is what we sort of informally call the firmware, and it's this compiled file that contains the MicroPython interpreter and the MicroPython, much of the MicroPython code that makes up the magic of the TS Pico. And it's usually called a UF2 file because that's the file extension. So in the upgrade process, you're going to plug your Pico board into a cable that's connected to your computer. And you press a button on the Pico itself, the Pico chip itself, when you do this, and the Pico chip shows up as like a thumb drive, storage, little storage thing, and you drag the UF2 file into that. And then you'll disconnect this and stick it back into the slot on the computer and turn the computer on and type in a command that says upgrade. And what that command will do is copy some additional files that you've put on your SD card into the Pico, which finishes step 2 of the upgrade process. And then the third step is upgrading the ROM that has Gustavo's customizations in it, and that will be done through another program that you run on the 2068, And literally, the 2068 will program the flash chip with this update to the ROM. Nifty little feature that you can do. And at that point, you will be fully up to date. If you've used the TS Pico any, a lot, whatever, and done a directory, for instance, you'll notice that if the files, if there's like 2 pages of listings to show, when it hits the bottom of the screen, it asks you, do you want to continue, yes or no? And you can type Y or N. And then it does it again at the very end. And there's a little bug in that. So that has been resolved. Ricardo's introduced a lot of nifty new features, and we've fixed some. Ricardo, fixed some bugs with things like the change directory routine, which would work most of the time, almost all the time, depended upon some odd problems. It would kind of flake out. So it's much more robust, much more reliable. We just have another round of testing to do, and that's with that ROM upgrade process. And then once we get that done, I think we'll be happy with it, and we'll start reaching out to people about upgrading their Picos. And this is a process that, I don't expect everybody is going to want to do, right? Because you'll need to plug in your Pico to your computer and do this file copy, and then run this thing on the computer, and then run the third step, which upgrades the flash. And for some folks, that might be like, that sounds a little bit too much. So we're going to reach out to people in batches and say, how do you want to do this? Do you want to do it yourself, or do you want to send it back to me and I'll run the upgrade or something? We'll figure out a solution for people who don't want to do it themselves.
Well, David, to save a lot of that headache, you can, if you make a quality video, or maybe I can make a good
Yeah,
video of it being done, that can like maybe cut that to a fraction of the amount of people who might not do it otherwise.
right, exactly. So that's one of the
Yeah.
things that we're going to need to do is make, like a training video, a little.
Yeah, because otherwise you might have everyone saying, "Yeah, I don't know what to do with it. So why don't you take this, David?" Yeah.
Right. um, but that was that ROM upgrade portion. That was like our last sort of stumbling block, and until Ricardo had figured out that he could do it in place. Uh, I was prepared to just say, well, we'll just send out everybody a new new flash chip with the thing in it, and that'll just solve that problem. um, so fingers crossed. But yeah, Adam, I'm going to take you up on your offer, and we'll make a little video and
Okay. Yeah.
make it available for folks. That'd be really good.
Although I don't know how good I would be at that. Like on this past Saturday, one of the reasons we got together was to make some videos. And did we make even one video? Did we record anything at all? No. No.
Well, the Albuquerque user group maybe isn't as efficient.
Probably
as
not. We like to BS.
there you go. um, yeah. Hey, John, are you there? I saw John earlier.
I am here. Can you hear me?
Yeah. So,
Oh, good.
John, John, you went to a robot show in the 80s.
That's right. Yeah, that was definitely crazy, and it set my expectations really high, and they really haven't been met since.
So,
But yeah, that was definitely a crazy time with all of these personal robots, I guess, and I kind of refreshed my memory from some of the pictorials that were on the web. But there were I remember quite a bit from that, but definitely some of the specifics were a little vague, definitely. But
Well, why don't you
I
back up and
do
tell us
remember. Yeah,
what
yeah,
the show was and
absolutely.
where it was?
Yes, so it was at the Albuquerque Convention Center, and it was this, as I now know the title, the International Personal Robot Congress and Exposition. So, but basically, it was, from my point of view, it was kind of a trade show for personal robots, and which was a crazy thing. These things started to show up, but I think the one that I was most familiar with at that time was the Heathkit Hero One, which had been starting to show up in a lot of places in the news and so on, as well as in the Heathkit catalog, which I was familiar with. Um, but the that I remember lots of tables and aisles. Very, if you've been to a trade show recently, it was not much different in that sense, but there were lots of these robots moving around on the floor, and a lot of them just kind of stationary at the booth on display. And I'm not really sure who the target audience was for this, other than experimenters at this point, and maybe some kind of a trying to get some kind of industry started to sell these things and look for places that would sell it. So I'm not really sure what happened with that after that, but I do remember seeing a couple of robots with ZX81 inside, which I was familiar with since I'd been a Timex 1000 user for a couple of years at that point. And I remember spotting them inside, a couple of them. And I do remember seeing the Henry robot when I kind of refreshed my memory what that looked like,
Let
but I
me just
certainly don't
pause you there.
remember
Just
specifics.
John, I just want to say during the
Sure.
last meeting, the reason this is getting brought up is because David, I think it was David who brought up
Yes.
a book that was written about someone who used in like 86 it was published, but had used a Timex
Right.
1000 or 81 maybe inside of his robot, which he called Henry. And that got me
Yes.
going down looking into it. So you saw it
Sure.
and then you said, oh, I was there.
Yes.
So
Yes. Yes. Yeah. So and I don't think it was doing much at the time that I passed by. So I just kind of remember it in the booth, but I remember spotting the Timex 1000 and finding that pretty entertaining. Kind of inside the dome there.
right.
And then I do remember a couple of others, and I did see that there were some others mentioned in that pictorial that also used the ZX81. But from my point of view, there were a couple of interesting things there, and I was certainly very interested in electronics, and that my interest was growing at that point. So I had been thinking about this for a while, and kind of directions that I might want to go with interfacing and that kind of thing, and that probably did start off some of that in my uh, personal pursuits at
Oh,
that
that's
point.
great.
So, but and as I mentioned, I have somewhere I have an interfacing board that I built around that time at about the age of 12 or 13. So that
That's cool.
definitely to control some motors and that kind of thing. I think it was like a 4-channel bidirectional motor controller or something like that, from probably probably a book, or which I you know again probably is still around somewhere.
Right.
But
Yeah.
So
the
quick.
but then the coolest thing I remember, I think, I mean, there were a couple of cool things there as well, which were uh, the uh, the Androbot Topo, which is kind
Yeah.
of one of the coolest looking robots from that era, definitely.
That was
And
Nolan Bushnell's endeavor, right? Is that?
that seems familiar. Yeah, it's been a while since I've read up on that, but I
Yeah.
do remember that.
I don't want to say
And
that without
then
looking that up because
yeah,
I think it
yeah,
is.
yeah. and then of course definitely the Heathkit Hero ones, which were probably the most accessible robot I think of that time period, unless you were doing it entirely from scratch, I guess. But those were
Yeah, I just looked it up, and it was Nolan Bushnell's company's. Speaking of
yeah.
which, Nolan Bushnell was one of the keynote speakers at that, and so was Isaac Asimov. They both
Yeah,
gave
and
speeches.
yeah, and I do remember, um, I do remember hearing that Isaac Asimov was going to be part of that, but I just wasn't able to go that day, unfortunately. So, but yeah, he was definitely one of my kind of all-time heroes as far as science communicator. It's an incredibly prolific author. I
Yeah.
think the most prolific author. Wrote over like 510 books or something. So, and his nonfiction is just fascinating. But so anyhow, and then the show robot was the other kind of key attraction, which was this pretty much almost human sized robot with a I remember it had some kind of arms, and it was fully mobile. It could move around on the floor, and then it had a voice, and it was essentially being remote controlled by a guy who was kind of standing off to the side, and nobody really seemed to notice that he was doing it. I kind of looked around, and he was doing a pretty good job of kind of being off to himself and speaking in a very low voice into this microphone, I think, that was in and kind of hidden, and then had his hand in his pocket and controlling the robot with a hidden controller. And so it was really entertaining, kind of effective demo, and kind of set the bar pretty high for trade shows. And again, I don't think I've really seen much like it until the recent humanoid robot demos that have started to show up. But
That's interesting to hear.
So, yeah, I don't know if Adam, I don't know if you remember this, but certainly there was an explosion of robot stuff in the early 80s. And I think it sort of peaked around 84, 85
I
with,
do remember there were lots of like so many like I remember I used to get the Heathkit catalog too, even though I couldn't build a damn thing. And I remember that I wanted the Hero robot, which is I think it was like 2 grand,
yeah.
and I was like 12 or 13, and so that wasn't going to happen. And if I had gotten it, I'm glad I didn't because I couldn't have built it, and then I would have been really screwed.
So, here's an interesting connection. Joe, didn't you tell me that you used to work for Heathkit?
Yeah, I did. I worked in a small repair facility for Heath Zenith back after they
Joe,
merged.
somehow you got all fuzzy. You're super out of
Oh,
focus.
it's this new camera. There we go.
Yeah, there you are.
It's so automatic it never works. Um, so yeah, that was back in the days of the 286, and I don't know if you remember the Super Sport laptops
Hmm.
and Z248s, which were very unique, oddball machines. They had an empty backplane,
Are these
and
the ones that
everything was on a
Heathkit
slice.
and Zenith did together or something like that?
Yeah, so Zenith and Heathkit merged, and then Group Bull merged, and then Packard Bell bought them, and yeah, it got handed around, and uh, basically they're completely shut down. They're just a name now. They gets the Zenith name is still stamped on stuff, but I think it's a foreign company of some kind.
You mentioned the Zenith 248. That was a very common computer in the Air Force. They had
Oh
tons
yeah,
of them.
tons of them. Yeah, I would get a lot of them, and they would come back with sand in them. We would actually had to take everything out of them and just dump the sand out of them. Yeah, but it was warranty repair stuff. Yeah.
Uh, did you work on any of the robot?
No, I did work at a company called Printech before that, And shortly after I left Printech, they uh they got a contract to refurbish a bunch of those robots, and I
Oh.
really missed out there. So it's kind of sad about that. But yeah, I still had friends there from when I worked there, and they said they had them running all over the shop floor, just bumping into things, and they programmed to say uh, unacceptable words for a for a business environment. But yeah, I missed out on that one.
Very funny. Cool.
I did go to a couple of the employee auctions where Heath would put out an auction of like engineering samples and product returns that were not deemed worth fixing and that kind of stuff. But I was never able to buy one of the robots. They always went for a lot.
Oh wow. Yeah. Even then.
Even then, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. That's cool. Um. Hey, Carl. I saw your name, Carl.
Yeah.
Oh, perfect. Your background is exactly the thing that we want to hear about.
Which one of the things? That's
Yeah,
just
well,
one.
both of them actually. Yeah, yeah. So tell us about where you are with the 1510, and then of course with your super cartridge.
Well, I kind of wanted to talk to you about something because I'm ready to. I want to not burn, flash some ROMs on for the ROM replacement cartridge thing, and I was going to reach out to you and see which programs maybe you'd be interested in seeing if they worked.
Okay. Okay.
I mean, so if you could give me a
we need to
list.
like explain what we're talking about here first.
No, we don't. Everybody knows what's going on. But so what we're talking about here is there's three kind of cartridge things, right? There's the original one that everybody's known about since probably about this time last year, right? Is when it kind of blew up.
This
This is for the
1510.
Timex 1000.
Right. This is for the ZX81, TS 1000, 1500. It's basically a clone of the TS 1510 cartridge adapter that Timex, came out with. That I'm sure they sold 1 million of those things. Obviously not, but anyway, it wasn't really too popular back then because there's only 4 software cartridges that they came out with it, and those weren't particularly compelling titles in my opinion. But maybe Timex had other ideas.
I'm going to put that on the
Um,
screen, Carl. But
sure.
you keep going.
Okay. And so at some point, I think Don, right? Don Dindang or something like that,
Yep, that's right.
or also known as Superflow. He, I guess, reverse engineered it. He's got some stuff up on the web that, he tore it apart and reverse engineered it, made a board, I guess the interface board, which is the part that plugs into the computer. And then he made a cartridge. And so you could actually, that's a good picture there,
This one here.
David. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, because if you ever look at the 2068's cartridge slot inside the 2068, you see where that kind of notch is right there. It's the one,
The
two, three,
divider.
four
Yep.
connector in. Right. On the 2068, it's only 1, 2. So it's right next to the second and third pin.
Yeah.
Right. So that prevents you from plugging in the the 1510 cartridges into the 2068 and vice versa.
Right.
So that you won't do any damage there. Anyway, so once Superflow came up with these designs, he made a cartridge for it, but the cartridge was really, really tall because he meant it to fit into that the 1510 itself. And you kind of see how it's got a riser there after the board, and then the cartridge kind of sticks out. And I guess in his design, he couldn't really put too much in where the riser portion is, so he had to make it pretty tall. But the reason he did that was so you could actually put it into the actual real 1510. But come to find out, how many people really have that? It's a pretty rare piece of equipment.
Yeah.
Using eBay's favorite word, rare, but
Exclamation, exclamation, exclamation.
well, and I did look for one for a long time, and I couldn't really get one, and then I found one.
actually two. The guy had two of them, and I didn't pay exactly 1984 prices on it, but I think I paid $300 for the one that he had in the box. It was in the box and everything was in there, which to me was okay. That's reasonable to me, but I know most people be like, forget that. It's just a cartridge adapter, right? It's pretty worthless to anybody else. Then once I got that, or he got my order on eBay, it was like, hey, I got another one. It's not in the box, and I think it might be more used. And I was like, okay, well, I'll take that one too. And then so I think I gave him $150 for that one. So between two of them, it's almost half a grand. So I've got them.
But now you don't have to load tapes and capitals or states and capitals from tape anymore.
Exactly. I mean, that's worth $100 right there. But so anyway, that I think kind of that design that he had floundered around on the web since I think around 2009, maybe he came out with that or somewhere in that area. And then Claudius, I think in 2020, he had some kind of I don't know, the Spec EPL thing. It's a kind of I'm not sure what that is over there in Europe. But it's I guess some kind of they had some kind of contest, and he entered this thing into the contest. And so he redesigned. I think he redesigned the interface board, and he redesigned the cartridges to make them pretty small. So because you were gonna plug them into the interface board and not into the 1510, right? Because like I said, how many people have that? So he made the cartridges pretty small. Anybody that's got one of these from me obviously knows they are pretty tiny. I don't know. They're probably about the size of the original cartridges, right? But anyway, so he made a PCB board design for both of those, the interface and the cartridge, and he entered it in this contest. And I don't know how he got it to work, because when I got it, I got the Gerbers for his boards and I sent them off, had them made. And when I got them back, he had left off some things on the PCB design, such as some silk screening, or extra silk screening on the fingers that I had to sand off. And he had no keys, right? He had no key cutouts. So you wouldn't have been able to plug it in, or at least an accessory into it, right? Because of the notch that needs to be there. So I had to cut those notches in the board. So, not entirely, huge labor process there, but it's just extra work that, should not have had to have been done if the PCB design was right. And, I talked to Claudius about it. He's like, yeah, I noticed I missed those things, and someday I'll go back and fix it. And so I think, I talked to David a little bit about it, and then there was like, hey, I really haven't messed with PCB design for, probably like 2 decades at that point. And I know that David had come up with some boards, and he's like, I use Easy EDA, and, I was looking into KiCad or KiCad or whatever people call it. And so I don't know, I think it was probably in September-ish, August, September, I kind of sat down. I know I talked to some people here that, hey, we need to redesign these or fix the problems, right? Because in addition to him making the board, once I got it and built it up, they didn't work. And so I had to figure out, troubleshoot what was going on there. And there was some, he had inadvertently, I'm sure, the A12 or the A14 and the A15 lines where
Well,
they go into
Carl, maybe you can
production
talk more
logic.
about where the state of your board is now. Um,
Okay, well, I
yeah,
mean, so I guess we'll kind of go, and just suffice to say that he had some problems with the board that I had to fix.
yeah. I don't mean to cut you off, but
Yeah, right.
yeah,
I know.
yeah.
I know. So I fixed those. And then, like I said, in the August timeframe, I got into the PCB design software, and then I went ahead and designed my own board for the cartridge and the interface, and had those built, and those worked out, worked better. So I integrated all the stuff that he missed out, right? The fingers have the no extra silk screen on them. I made everything gold plated, right? ENIG is what they call it in the PCB houses. So it's gold plated fingers. I had the angle cut on them so they would plug in and out of the connectors better. And then, so that's the second design, I guess. That's kind of what we kind of have now for the regular cartridges. And the regular cartridges of the original design were designed to run 4 programs. Originally, the 4 original Timex programs, right? So it was meant with a 32K chip on there. But my design, I said, well, I had the envision. I had an envisionment. What envisionment? I had a vision. You know, if you ever heard of Thunderheart, that hey, that this would people would be eventually able to make their own ROM cartridge, ROMs, and be able to flash them on there and be able to turn basically any key file that was made for the ZX81 into a ROM cartridge, right? That was kind of my vision, and so Ryan kind of help with that part of it, right? Getting a software thing that could actually take a P file and ROMify it, I guess is kind of what we're using now. And I know that Kevin has actually done that, and he helped Ryan make a Windows executable of his utilities so that he can, Windows people can actually use it because, Ryan's not that he doesn't like Windows, but I guess he prefers his Raspberry Pi, the Linux stuff. So, and nothing wrong with that. But anyway, so Ryan, big hats off to Ryan for coming up with that part of it, because if that didn't exist, then we'd still be stuck pretty much with the just the 4 cartridges that Timex had. And so once that happened, I was like, well, 4 games or programs, that to me just wasn't enough. I was like, I wanted to see more, 8, 16, and
32.
eventually we settled out on 32. And, there is a point where it's too much, right?
What?
And I think 32 programs on a cartridge is more than enough. And so, we had talked about, and I think in those meetings about, the little hexadecimal rotary switches that you can find out there. And so I looked at that and said, okay, well, let's design a board or a cartridge that would use that. And so that was pretty much easy, but it's just, okay, well, how would you know with that many programs where, which one you selected? And so that's kind of where I came up with okay, well, we need some 7-segment displays to tell you, which program you're on. And then I started looking into that and found out that, well, hey, some guy came up with this, chip that actually mimicked a chip from the 70s that's a BCD to 7-segment decoder. But the old chip doesn't do hexadecimal. So he made this, it's like a PAL chip or a GAL chip that he just made the logic for it so that it would actually display the hexadecimal numbers. So I bought a bunch of those chips and burned his little, his EPL file or whatever they call them on those things, and designed up a board, got them in, and they worked. And so, it has 2 7-segment displays. The first one tells you if you're in the upper or lower bank, so to speak. So the 16 programs in the lower bank and 16 programs in the upper bank. And then as you dial the hexadecimal switch around, it goes from 0 to F, right? It's all 16 in hexadecimal. So now
What's amusing about this to me, Carl, is I'll back up for just a second. Carl showed this to me on Saturday, and we went through all 32 programs, but we did not have a list of anything that was on the cartridge. So we were
Well,
going through the 32 programs going, I
I
wonder
do
what's
I
going to
do
be
have a
next.
list. Yeah, I do have a list. So and when people buy those, a couple people have bought them, and I send them the list of
Oh,
what's
okay.
on my EEPROM.
I'm just not good enough for you. I understand.
Well, I didn't I did bring it, but it was for the old one that I had shown at the computer show that we went to in December.
I see.
But then Ryan went back because I talked to him at that event and said, hey, there's some problems with some of these programs, and he went back and fixed them all. So I put all the fixed ones back on there. Now we're up to 31 programs, so we're right 1 slot from 32. But I know Kevin, like I said, he bought one of the ones from me, and he bought some flash chips, right? Because like I mentioned, when I bought these boards, I got a real good deal on the Toshiba EPROMs. I think they were like, I don't know, 60, 70 cents each. So I bought like 20 or 30 of them. I don't know. But anyway, so, that's, I think, if the flash chip that I designed this thing for is about, $2 or $3. That's not expensive, but it's, 70 cents is better than $3. So anyway, I designed that up, got that done. So that's kind of, I think, going to be the extent of the cartridge based software, right? And then what I kind of wanted to do was make a ROM replacement cartridge that would actually replace the ROM,
So Carl,
right?
before you continue on to this other project, so do you consider it done now? Like the only thing that's not done is like maybe codifying more or ROMifying, not codifying, ROMifying more programs?
Right.
Okay.
I think we're at the end of the road for that one. I mean, there's been some talk between Ryan and myself, and doing some other things with it, like maybe putting RAM on it, because not everybody has gone inside and done a 16K RAM upgrade,
Mm.
right? So, there is a possibility that we go back and visit, and that stuff would kind of be more on the interface board than on a cartridge, because, as soon as you plug the interface board in, it's basically going to be a 16K RAM pack, right? It's
So I have a question for you, Carl, about that. So if you put RAM on the interface board, how will you support RAM pack wobble?
well, the whole point of that is to eliminate it, so we won't support it.
Oh,
So
Well,
you
if we
don't get
really-
that 70s vibe. What's going on here?
yeah,
You can always put some blue tack on it. Don't worry, it's fine.
Yeah, maybe we could put like a little, see if we can find some mercury switches around somewhere.
There we go.
Those are
Mhm.
banned. And so if you shake it a little bit, maybe we can have it do a reset.
Okay, perfect.
Or maybe it'll short some data lines together or some address lines together and crash the computer.
Thank you for the question, David.
But obviously too, it'll have an expansion slot, because the thing with RAM pack is that's it, right? There was never an expansion port on the RAM pack. So, if I design this interface board, it would obviously still have an expansion, because if you wanted to plug a printer in or, something else, maybe even a memo pack. So we would have to obviously respect if there's another RAM pack, right? We would disable the one that's on this interface board. So, anyway, so there's talk about doing something like that, and we can include stuff like high res support, because I kind of found out that with this ROM replacement cartridge that, like I said, I'm talking about here, there's a thing called Sponzi, which somebody made a Spectrum ROM and kind of ZX81ified it. So it basically runs the Spectrum code, but of course there's no color or sound or anything like that. But you can run, I haven't tried it yet, but you can run, Spectrum, at least basic software.
Very
and it
slowly,
should
it
still
seems
work.
like, because when we messed around with it, it was slow.
Oh,
Well,
wow.
I think that's just scrolling. When it was scrolling, you saw that it was slow. Yeah, because it's
Ooh.
doing the high
Yeah.
res, so it has to move everything up a line at a time. But I think if it was, the screen wasn't scrolling, it might be faster. I don't know.
Okay.
Like I said, we might have to try. I had to try some software on it. But that was kind of one of the things that I wanted to do with the ROM cartridge, because that's a 16K cartridge, right? Because the Spectrum ROM's 16K. It's not an 8K ROM like the ZX81. So when I kind of taking this from another design from another person that kind of did this, so he explains a lot of the things about the 16K ROM, and so that's kind of what you see behind me is the ROM cartridge, and you can kind of see the big dip switch thing in the upper left, and you've got an 8K and a 16K switch, so you can put 8K images on there, and so it's a 64K chip, just like the the original cartridge that I made for the software, and so you can put 8K ROM images on it, or 16K ROM images. As far as I know, there's only one 16K ROM image, and that is the Sponzi ROM. So, but it's a pretty compelling ROM, to be honest. It's kind of weird to see copyright 1982, Sinclair Computer Corp come up on your ZX81 when you turn it on. But Sponzi needs high res support. So that's kind of where we got into this RAM pack thing, where a lot of people again don't want to go in and mod their machines, so maybe we could put those kind of mods externally and give you those features without you having to open up the machine. other than that, this ROM replacement board needs its own interface, right? It can't use the cartridge, the 1510 cartridge interface, because that's a totally different design. And so I had to come up with a new interface board, and I came up with the cartridge behind you, and tried it out, and it didn't work. And so I had to troubleshoot, and I did some wrong things like Claudius did, routing things to the wrong place. And so I spun up a revision board and got that back, and that actually worked. So I mean, Adam actually, well, like you said, he saw the Sponzi ROM working.
Yeah. Well, magically, it also worked on my Timex 1000, which has not been modified, we don't think, for high res. So why it was working, I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's I kind of wanted to forget about that because I want to sleep at night. So I have no idea why. So basically, I have my 1510 prototype, which is a TS 1000 with a 1500 ROM in it, right? And it's silver. Kind of got that idea from the ZX Load Museum, because they've got a couple of those over there on display. So I tried it out on mine, and I get a bunch of artifacting, right? You can still see Sinclair, you can the key cursor and all that stuff, but it's all obfuscated by this crap that's on the screen.
Which is
And
normal. It's not supposed to work.
yeah, I think that's normal because it needs high res. So if you don't have the mod, you get all this artifacting. And so I was like, okay, I need to do the mod. So Ryan had his ZX81 in my shop here for some repair. Anyway, and because his keyboard was bad, so we put a new keyboard on his ZX81, and that's a actual real Spectrum or real ZX81 for the U.S. market, right? He bought it from Sinclair when they were selling those things back in the 80s. So anyway, I modified his with the WRX high-res mod, right? And I didn't try it before. I probably should have. I just assumed it's not going to work, just like my 1500. But I put the mod in, put my cartridge on, tried Sponzi on his, and it works beautifully, right? Like it's supposed to. We went over to Ryan's house Saturday, and
Adam's house.
Adam's house, sorry. And wow, don't bite my hand off there.
The other Ryan.
The other Ryan, right? Went to Adam's house, and he has a TS 1000 from Ryan that he's borrowing, quote unquote. It's really kind of his, I guess, but he always wants to remind us that it's not his.
Oh, these things are getting expensive. Anyhow, yeah.
Right. Anyhow, so we tried it on his, and God dang it, it freaking worked like it's supposed to. And I put the mod RAM in there, the 16K internal RAM, and we put one of the Stewart's, he's got that composite module thing. We put that in there, but I never modded his with high res that I can recall, but I'm pretty sure I didn't.
That might be it right there, Carl.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's some extra components, that you got to solder in on some of the lines there, and I never did that. And so, unless somebody else went in there after me, maybe a gremlin or a little wizard or something went in there and did that, but I don't know why his machine works without a high res mod, but it does.
Yeah,
So,
we were able to run some plot commands and stuff and watch it plot across the screen in high res. It was pretty interesting to see. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I'm just gonna let lying dogs lie, or what's the phrase
Sleeping
there?
dogs.
Sleeping dogs lie, right? And so
Sleeping Sinclair's lie.
right. I don't want to open it up and kind of try and figure out why it works on his as opposed to I guess any other machines I tried on, maybe I'll just try it first before I actually try and put the high res mod in there. So that's kind of an interesting, again, like I said, I don't know why his works and mine didn't. I mean, for all intents and purposes, it shouldn't work. It shouldn't have done, it shouldn't work and be fine. But anyway, so the other thing that kind of comes to, like I was saying, David, is what kind of ROMs do you want me to try? Just so you guys can understand, there are some ROMs that use their own character set. And the way the ZX81's video works, those kind of ROMs may not work this way without some extra circuitry, because it's kind of technical, but there's resistors that are between the ROM inside the machine and the bus, so that basically the ULA can access the ROM directly, but be isolated from the bus.
Uh-huh.
And because that's why you have to have the mirrors, right? So the ROM actually has a character send in it, obviously, but the way the ULA is set up and the video system is set up,
Are you talking about ROM mirroring? Just to make sure I understand what
exactly
you. Okay.
right. Well, it's just it's just the fact that since they didn't decode it, when you look at certain areas in the memory space, it's going to be a mirror, quote unquote, of something that's really there, right? Since the ROM's from 0 to 8, every 8K, you have a mirror of it, unless something else is there, right? Like the memory from from 4,000 to 8,000 obviously is not going to be mirrored, because it's actually decoded, right? But on the anything above 32K on the ZX81, is kind of triggering the ULA to do a video refresh, right? To do a video. And so it's kind of relying on the fact that there's a mirror of the ROM up in the upper 8K, the last 8K chunk on the top of the memory space. And if that's not there, it goes and gets the character set, and that's kind of how some of these replacement ROMs worked, because they came with their own, right? So they would replace that, but I think that's kind of few and far between to kind of speed this up. There's only a few ROMs that do that. There's a lot of other ROMs that didn't. For instance, like the Sponzi ROM, we did. What other ROM did we do? We did the Timex Store Demonstrator ROM.
Right. Yeah.
The Timex Store Demonstrator ROM, and that worked. That
Which
doesn't,
basically lets you type in your name and it talks back to you, and you're like, "Woo!"
Yeah, we
Oh,
didn't
don't
go
forget
through
the
it. It's
recipe.
what's that?
I said, don't forget the recipe.
Oh,
Your
I don't
recipe
remember the
code.
recipe. Maybe we didn't last that long.
The recipe. What's that?
There in that demonstrator is there's a recipe for something, and
Oh, yeah. It asks you for how many people you're going to have, right?
yep,
And
yep,
how many things you need to buy to make it for that many people, right?
yeah.
That
Oh,
is
we
part
didn't.
of
I
the,
didn't use it that long.
yeah,
Sorry.
that's right. We didn't go through the whole thing. So he didn't get the full, store demonstrator thing. But that's kind of cool, because the store demonstrator came on its own board, right, guys? If you remember
Yeah.
back in the day, that you plugged into the 26, you plugged into the 1000. And so I guess there's some changes that need to be done on the ROM, and the guy that kind of did this already, that I'm kind of leveraging his design, he kind of explains that in his GitHub site. So I changed a couple of bytes that needed to be changed. I don't know why they need to be changed, but suffice to say, it works, right? And then there's a Memotech ROM. I can't remember. I think it's Memo Writer or Memo,
Oh,
one of their,
like Memo Calc or Memo.
yeah, one of their application software cartridges that they had that you could plug into the 1000.
Yeah.
One of those ROMs I got on there, and that worked. And then I had a German assembler disassembler ROM on there, and I remember Adam kind of giving a weird
I was like, "How are we
noise.
going to use this? Like, we don't like the on-screen instructions are not in English. This is not very
Yeah,
helpful."
all the commands were in German, right?
Yeah.
But so it's like, unless you're bilingual or,
So then we started using Hot Z after for like the
oh yeah,
yeah.
yeah. But HotZ is a software. It's not a
Yeah,
ROM
yeah.
replacement. But I mean,
Yeah.
I think there is one maybe that Ray came up with eventually. But anyway, suffice it to say that I think another cartridge program that I had for the ROM was, you can actually put a TS 1500 ROM in there, right? And since that's only an 8K ROM, well, you have this 8K left, right? Because you can do a 16K ROM. And the 8K just happens to correspond where the cartridge, the lower 8K of a cartridge would be. So you could actually put an 8K cartridge image along with a TS1510 ROM, right? And use my ROM replacement board, and you can actually boot up an 8K cartridge with a 1500 ROM in your ZX81. So kind of cool little things like that, kind of can be done.
Um, Carl, if somebody wanted to get the 1510 board and a cartridge, how would they go about doing that?
Well, currently, I guess it's through the groups IO. Send a request over there, um, or maybe put something in the chat here, and we can exchange stuff. But basically, it's kind of been that way. I'm looking at starting up like a Tindy store, maybe an Etsy store. I don't know. I've kind of looked in that a little bit, and I've heard people are on Tindy. They're like, well, the back end is horrible on it. I mean, presents everything nicely, but when somebody buys something, and you got to go ship it, well, it doesn't really integrate with any kind of shipping thing, and so you got to kind of have to do that all manually, which is not horrible probably for something like this, because I'm not going to be getting hundreds of thousands of orders, so it's not like it's going to be probably a big deal. But again, I'm thinking maybe setting something like that up for the future, because I know obviously Tim has published his EX zine, and I really haven't gotten anything back from anybody overseas about that. And my intent with this wasn't per se to really commercialize it to the point where, I guess I wanted to sell it to, make money off of it per se, but I definitely wanted to sell some to the group and people that are interested in it, at least to get my money out of it, not necessarily to make myself a millionaire, which I don't know. Maybe there's a huge 10 cartridge, bubble out there somewhere.
Millions of ZX81s and TS1000s were sold.
That's true. That's true. And especially, like I said, since my vision was to encompass the fact that anybody could make their own cartridges out of their own software, that way you get rid of the biggest problem that we all had back then, which is loading from tape. And, it starts instantly. So, we went through 30, we kind of joked about it at Adam's house. We went through 31 programs, and we probably we saved ourselves probably at least 2 hours.
Yeah, loading time. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And then all the frustration of, especially these bigger ones, get it, and it's done. It says tape load error.
Yeah.
God. And we probably saved some equipment because something might have got thrown around. But so that's kind of another thing, that I'm happy to see some of these people using it, especially, I think, I don't know that Kevin ever comes on these, but, he's the one, like I said, that helped Ryan make the Windows binaries for his conversion utility. And he's also bought, a number of you have bought the cartridge stuff from me, but, I've only sold 2 of the 512K carts, and I know there's a couple more in the queue here that want it, so I need to get those out to them. But that's the whole. I'm glad to see that Kevin, since he helped Ryan make the Windows binaries, he's actually used the program to make his own ROMified versions of some software. I don't know what he's done with it, and he's talked to me and says, well, he's bought the flash chips so that he can use them on the 512K cart, because of course in EEPROM you need an eraser.
Yeah.
Of course you could just probably stick it out in the sun for an hour or two. I don't know, that might work, but anyway, so he's bought the flash chips, and I was like, hey, when you get those and you try them out, let me know if they work, because I haven't actually put one of those flash chips on there. So, there's some pin differences on there, and that's what the jumpers do, right? It redirects the pins to the right places for the flash chip. And I know there's some 512K flash chips out there that have a way different pin out. So I kind of mentioned that to him too, that, I designed this for those SST, 4 megabit EEPROM chips. So, and that's exactly what he got. So it shouldn't run into that problem, but, just kind of throwing it out there that there are some big, flash chips in there and DIP 32 packages that, the pinout is just, I don't know why they did it that way, because it doesn't really follow the standard flash EEPROM, that we've had since the 80s.
The JDEC standard, yeah.
Right, with the certain pins or certain things, right? And I don't know why they changed it, but anyway, so that's kind of where we are with all these cartridge things, and well, I think we're, like I said, winding up on these.
Winding down, I think.
Winding down.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. Winding down on these things. But yeah, so if you can get me some ROM programs you want me to try, and maybe where to get them, that would be good, and I'll give it a shot and see, because that's kind of kind of was compelling to me too, because now we can load, some fourth in there
Yeah.
and some, assemblers, or some of these other cool ROMs that, most people don't want to take their machine apart to try them, right? So they're
Mhm.
going to be kind of lost. So at least with this thing, we can try them. And you still have an expansion slot on it. So I was kind of joking with Adam again that you could actually, put the 510 cartridge expansion that I just built on the back of that. And so if you wanted to run, a cartridge on your ZX81 ROM, you could do that. But we were got, then it's going to get really long. We were
Mhm.
joking about it's going to, go over to David's house
Like the
eventually.
sidecars on the TI-99.
TI-99, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think we brought that up actually that day.
Yeah, that's what that is. So, but like I said, I've gotten some experience with the PCB software, which is good. I've gotten a lot of extra stuff out of this other than just making these cartridges for folks. So I've used, my PCB, not that I'm an expert or anything at it. I've built some other PCBs for other projects that I'm kind of into that, so now I can do that. So that kind of helped me with that, so that's kind of way I looked at it when I was like, I got to get into this PCB software thing, because I have some other ideas for other projects that I need to make PCBs for. And so it kind of really, there's always a carrot that you want to do something, right?
Yep.
And there's a, bigger fields that will lead to. So anyway, so anybody have any questions on the cartridges, or everybody's sleeping at this point?
No, I've got you.
Yeah.
I've got you.
Yeah. Thank you, Carl. I'm gonna. Oh,
Larry has
go
a
ahead, Larry.
question.
Oh, okay. Wonderful.
Tom? Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. With all playing the games, like Adam was talking about, he played Rocket Man this past weekend. I tried playing that on the emulator, and you need a joystick.
Well, you kind of seems like you do. Like I mentioned in the when I was talking about playing on real hardware, it's a true pain to play. I mean, we all know how great the Timex 1000 keyboard is, and it just comes forward and just blossoms, when you're playing the game, and using
Yes.
the keys all over the keyboard to like kind of to make it work. Yeah, it doesn't really work very well.
I mean,
But
has anybody, I know Will Rifker, I guess back in the 90s, had made a programmable Atari joystick, add-on that would, it was programmable. So it made it nice. But I could, of course, since he's recently passed away here, um, anybody's, I mean, I can't put playing these things on a keyboard. I don't use that original keyboard. I got a ZX81 plus 38 keyboard I use on my actual machine.
Mm-hmm.
And without any buttons or anything, I just the switches themselves, so it makes it fine. But how?
So I'm glad you brought that up, Larry, because I know me and Ryan had kind of talked about that, and that's maybe another thing we might look at putting on
I
this
thought that was going to
interface
be
board.
a little not talked about yet, but there you are.
Oh, wow.
Well, I mean, I totally forgotten about that, but
Oh.
it's in addition to the RAM being on the interface board, like a RAM pack. We were thinking, well, we need to put a joystick port on there, right? Because, like you said, Larry, exactly, some of these things.
Yeah, I mean,
right?
that's what
They
kind of downturn trying to play games. It's like what a pain. It's
right.
because I'm not coordinated enough to try to go this way and then a different game, use a different set of combos. Even the 5, 6, 7, 8 combo is like
Tough.
trying to play
Terrible.
five,
It's
I
terrible.
can't do it. I just can't do it.
And we were kind of joking because we were saying, well, maybe let's get a TS Pico, right? That interfaces between the keyboard and the ZX81. Yeah, it's kind of overkill, right?
Yeah, exactly. Too much.
Yeah, we could use it and write a little utility that you would run on the 1000 that would tell the Pico what kind of keys you wanted to interface things to, because making it programmable like that is kind of a tall ask, right? Because I mean, it's not a tall ask, but especially in this day and age, but it's it's much more difficult, I guess, than you would think it to be, right? Because now you're gonna, okay, well, what keys do I want to use? A lot of software out there is hard coded, right, to only use certain keys, and you can't reprogram them, or you
Yes,
can't
yes.
reassign them, right? So the reassignable ones wouldn't be a big deal because you could just make a keyboard, I mean, make a joystick thing that went to 5, 6, 7, and 8, and maybe some other, 0 for fire, and you could redefine the keys on those programs that allowed you to run that way, right? But
Yeah.
a lot of other ones that are hard coded to different keys, how you're going to have to tell the joystick thing, well, I want you to, for up, I need you to, it needs to push the B button, for instance, right? So I think there may be something out there that somebody made, if I recall, that kind of did that, made it more programmable or user definable. But that may be something we need to look at, because I know I think the Z Expand has a joystick port on it, right? And maybe it's
Yeah,
even
it does. I just looked it up. There's two available from again, it's a Tindy site from somebody selling two of them for $89 a piece. There's two in stock.
Oh,
So,
the Z Expand.
yep.
That's a good thing to have too, and that's kind of another thing we were looking at. Maybe we need to get a CPLD in there and allow it to be able to, but you kind of see where I'm going with this. It's not really simple. It's not something, oh, it's just,
Yes.
there has to
Unfortunately.
be some kind of, I think there has to kind of be, unless you come up with something, if you wanted to be simple, it would have a million jumpers on it.
Yeah, somebody, I
Each,
saw a picture of somebody had made something like that. It's like, nah, it gets kind of complicated for a lot of, trying to
right,
move it. And then you mess up and say, why does this work? And you set it back like a normal. It's like when you make stuff on breadboards. So much fun,
right.
you know.
So that's a good point that you brought that up, because I had kind of forgotten about the joystick thing. But that's
Okay.
something else that we could kind of think about putting onto the interface board, or even making a a separate board. I mean, I hate to do that, but um, that kind of would actually be a good idea, I guess, actually, because the people that have already bought this don't want to maybe buy a whole nother interface board. They would
Yeah.
just rather buy, a cartridge interface thing. And I know that's been done. Obviously, even back in the 80s, they had cartridge. They had joystick stuff for the ZX81, but I don't think a lot of those or any of those are really programmable to speak of. So that's a good point. I'll have to kind of put that in my head, and we'll see what we can do, because you're right. I think if they had some joysticks, now that we're kind of opened up the world of software to this thing,
Yeah, that would be easier to play then. It's because most of them ain't that coordinated. Trying to, if you ever use a joystick, it's hard to, shoot. Yeah.
yeah,
Although part of the beauty of playing on the ZX81 or the 1000 is that keyboard, right? That's what makes the game so good.
well,
Yeah.
Anybody?
that's what
Anybody?
Jeff was alluding to, and David too, with the Rampack wobble.
Right, right. That's sure enough.
You sat down for 2.5 hours, typed in this cool program, and then you went to get up to get a drink, bump the computer, and oh, well, there it is. It's gone.
Yeah.
Yep.
The thing about having a joystick though is like then you start having like so much on there. It's like what else aren't you going to add? Might as well. You have
Yeah.
to say stop at some point.
Well, I mean, the joystick's reasonable. I mean, I don't think putting like an HDMI interface on it would be really. I mean, it'd be cool, but I don't really think it would be. That's kind of out of the scope.
Yeah.
And nobody's
Um,
proposed a Laserdisc controller.
Well,
or
Carl,
maybe,
well,
or
Carl,
maybe a key. Go
you
ahead.
could do it. You could do an expansion bus for the ZX81, couldn't you?
Yep.
Yeah, sure. We can make the ZX81 control a 2068.
Oh my gosh. All right. I guess we're getting silly now, aren't we?
The power. What was the slogan? Something about the power and the price. I don't remember exactly.
Simple,
Thanks, Larry.
versatile,
Yeah,
affordable technology. That one?
Yeah.
I appreciate the. I don't know if you have one of my cartridges, but
Yeah. Want to get one from you? One of these, not. I don't want the big fancy one. But like the one behind you would suffice. But I don't need, like Joe asked. I don't need one with any chips or anything on. I got all that stuff already.
Well, the one behind them isn't for cartridges though. That one is for replacing the ROM.
right. And kind of the reason I, you know, I
That's
mean,
what I mean. That's fine. I mean, I could program. I have a programmer. I've got a racer from the 1980s. It still works. Uh, I mean, I stick with the EPROMs. I do have some erasable EPROMs, but which
Well, what
works
I
just
mean
fine.
is the cartridge PCB behind them is it's to replace like the ROM inside the system. So like that's how we run Sponzi.
Oh, that's all that's for? That one behind him?
Well,
yeah, well,
it's not all,
yeah,
but
that's what that's a ROM
I mean,
replacement
like a lot of
cartridge.
games, because I use Raspberry Pi to do the same thing that Ryan does. You know, I can make my own ROM files and stuff,
right.
and then I test them on the emulator to see if it, you know, if they work or not. You
Yeah, and
know, so
Larry, I've got a bunch that I built up that are just the old style, right? That just have the four.
yeah,
I
that's
mean,
fine. Yeah,
yeah,
I
I
don't
know
have
you.
much.
I know you. You know, you just want the boards, but you know, like I said, I built those up, and I don't think a lot of more people are going to buy those. So, I mean, I think the regular
That'd be
cartridge
fine
is
too.
only
Yeah,
$25. You know, I'm only asking
okay.
$25 for the four
That's
game cartridge,
it
and
costs me
that's
more than that to spin off.
yeah,
Get some made.
and that's populated, right? So $15
Yeah,
is what I was doing for the kit, and I would even still give you all the parts, right? Because as you know, you may have parts, that's fine, but they may not
right.
be the right footprint.
Mhm. Yeah.
Hey,
That's
I don't care about pretty. I care about functional.
right,
Yeah.
right. So, you
I sent
know,
you some pictures of stuff I made. You know, hand wired, you know, boards and you know, yeah.
right. And so yeah, $25 for the older cartridge. Like I said, I think I built about 10 of those. I maybe sold one or two of them. So there, you know, I've got
Okay,
quite a
well,
few of those left.
I guess
David,
I need.
where do we stand on how much longer we've got here? And what
Uh,
else to talk about?
40-ish minutes. Um, thank you, Carl. Tim, I just wanted to check in with you about the ZX zine and where that is.
I think all of them have been sent out that are people that we know have either were part of our team or requested them. I did put a posting yesterday on the ZX forum saying, "Hey, I set aside 8 for me overseas that want some," and no one's responded. So okay, it was
Okay.
it was basically for the price of shipping, which is going to be about $9, but no one's responded so far. So okay, no problem. I guess they just want to download it. But so far, there's I believe 6 in Europe, 2 to Portugal, 1 to Scotland, 2 to England, and 1 to Wales.
Oh, wow.
So
Wow.
Mine has
Okay.
arrived.
Oh,
pardon?
yours
I
arrived, John? Oh,
have mine.
Awesome.
nice. Nice.
I
Cool.
started to read it, but I still don't have much time to read it.
While you've got me on, actually, can you? I found that there's anything more stuff. This particular AJ Wi-Fi drives. I don't know whether they're for the 1000 or 2000, whatever model, but I've got 6 of them that I'm looking to pass on to somebody. So if someone knows which ones these are for, again, I got 6. There's
That looks
a
like
little bit of stacked here. So I
Show
was going through
those
stuff.
again. Show those again, Tim. Or those look like the
AJ.
second ones. Oh no, because
I
it's got
used
the
that
cover on the
design in
top.
the single drives.
So
Well, there was 2 revs, right? There's the older rev, the original
and the newer,
wiper
right,
drives,
right.
right, and
That's
the
the
newer one.
newer.
It kind of looks like the newer one, yeah.
it does.
All right.
The older
So
one
if
was
someone
clear.
has the newer one and needs some of these, I got 6. I was consolidating some boxes. I was getting rid of stuff, and then I'm suddenly. So Bill used to keep these in business card. You know those little folders you put business cards in. And this thing fell. I'm like, oh look, there's another one, and it had 6 in it. So I'm like, okay, so I got 6 more of these, and I don't need them. Looking to pass them on. So if someone's got a micro drive
Well,
that
if
will take
anybody,
these,
yeah, if anybody doesn't speak up, you know, send them to me, Tim. I'll certainly, I could use them.
okay.
I got a ton of those things, you know.
I think
Is
you
there
got
any
that. I think
data
you
on
got
them
the
that needs to
market
be
on.
saved?
It probably is. Yeah.
Say again.
Is there any data on them that needs to be saved?
I have no idea. Knowing Bill, his tiny writing, let me look at one. It has some letters, numbers, 128K, and something. Same thing here. Oh, WMB. So William M. William Miller, and then B something. I think he indexed them as far as like put a code on them. So okay, this particular tape is this particular number, and just mentions the size on it. So I don't know if there's anything on it at all. One does say graphics, one says word process. So I have no idea what's on them.
Tim, did Bill have a what was the English version of the wafer drive? That was it was called the wafer drive. It was
Right,
Rotron.
right. I think he might have. I have to look at the list of stuff that I got. But and these are actually labeled A&J macro drive. And they have a 62. If you can see that there, A&J macro drive 62.
That's how long it
can.
is.
And I don't know what that really means other than maybe length.
Yeah,
That's how many feet. Yeah.
that's how many. Yeah,
How
like
many feet? Okay.
Mhm.
So again, I found 6 of them. I'm assuming the little red thing on the side must be a write protection tab.
I believe so. That doesn't
is.
look familiar to me, but yeah, Paul's.
Okay.
It is.
Yeah, but those definitely do look like the second rev, because the other one, the first revs are kind of skinnier, and I don't think have a cover that covers the tape on the top.
No, they don't.
Not too sure, but yeah, these definitely have the little retractable. You can actually let me see here. Put it up,
Right.
and you can see it being retracted.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there's a thing on when you put it into the wafer drive, there's some tabs there that push that up and open it.
Yep.
And then when we pull it out, it pulls
Reset
them
it.
so it closes it. Yeah. So
Yeah, it's not spring bound at all like floppies. You just open, but yeah.
right.
So a couple were open. I closed them. I don't know, but yeah, all right. If no one has anything, I'll get them to you, Carl.
That'd be cool.
I
But yeah, I
still
know, Tim, that he had some of the stuff I did get from you. They were in like some business card folios,
Folders.
right? Because they fit kind of in there. So I'm
Yeah,
not surprised you might have found some more in a business card folio.
Yeah,
Carl,
so
do you have the drive for that?
Yeah.
Yeah, we need to check it out sometime.
I think
Okay.
some of those wallets were imprinted also.
Oh, wow.
I think all the spare ones I had, because I had some loose ones that were just drives, but not the whole cart, not the whole unit. I sent to Carl. It's like, okay, he's a hardware guy. Send him to him. He can do something more than I can with it. The only thing I have left, really, of any significance, is the Timeworks. It's where you put the little ZX81 in. It had room for cartridges. It's like a plastic. It's big. It's like 2.5 feet long. You put a TV there and the whole bits. But yeah, if you ever look at that Timeworks device or plastic thing, Dave, you can look it up real quick and show up on screen.
I'm just trying to get my browser.
3 feet. Yeah, you need something that big for the 81. You have to.
It is. Yeah. Well, it's like you can go get it if you need to. But
No,
I'm sure David can bring it up.
Yeah.
So
I'm trying to remember what that thing was called.
Timeworks console or something like that.
Yeah, was it with an X? Timeworks? WR?
Yeah, with an X, because that was
okay.
they made software and made hardware. The idea was you put the TV all in one unit, to kind of make it look like sort of like an Apple in a way.
Yeah.
Had spots for some cartridges and.
Why is it not showing up for me?
But it is.
I think I recall what you're talking about. It was a big black plastic piece that it had room for the TV set on top. Yeah.
Yep.
Cute.
Yeah.
Just kind of held.
Let me go see
Control center. Here we go. Okay.
Oh,
okay,
David's found it.
Oh, I'll get the flyer. Here we go.
Is there a picture of it?
Getting there. A little slow. Okay. Now I got to bring Zoom back.
We're testing him as Google foo here.
Well, it's it's the multi-screen sharing thing. This black. Yeah. So
it's good. It's more like 2 feet, but it's pretty good size. It's not going to.
So it's not an expansion though. It's just like a holder.
No,
it's a big plastic tray.
Piece of plastic that lets you basically hold everything. I guess the monitor sits on top of it. The ZX81 sits there. You've got room for some cassettes. It's just, I don't know why someone bought it. Really,
is that the Spark printer to the right of that? Like
no,
that little.
this is Spectrum.
Yep, that is.
What the hell is that doing there?
They, some folks imported them. They, purchased them.
All right.
I had one myself until I loaned it to somebody. So yeah.
Kind of ironic because Adam saw one.
Yeah, just the other day, 2 days ago.
So Tim, it says that this thing is 20 inches deep and 14 inches wide.
Yep. Okay.
Okay.
It's good size.
Yeah.
It's
And you can
light,
keep
but
your
it's
five
big. So I don't
most,
know. So,
used cassette tapes right there.
so if anybody's close by wants to pick it up, looking to get rid of it, it's sitting out outside, so protected but outside.
Yeah. Okay. Um,
And then Davey, you got some zines and some software to go to the Chicago with you.
pile of tapes. Yes, as a matter of fact. And so when you sent those, I don't know, I didn't put two and two together. But when they showed up, I was like, oh yeah, okay, boxes of cassette tapes. And I have more of those in my basement. So I'm gonna put them all in a box and take them to take them to Chicago and unload them on
Yeah.
unsuspecting people.
When I went to the West Coast Computer Fair, I found two guys there that had some Timex stuff, and I actually brought some with me just to unload. So I think I gave like each guy 4 cassette tapes.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's absolutely
Because the
perfect.
box, so Bill had a box that was like 2 feet long, just full of those. And there was like, oh, you want 11 of the magic, what is it, magic math works or something like that,
Oh my
and then
gosh.
12 of that one, and then like, wow,
Yeah.
Had them out like AOL discs.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly. Exactly.
So
Well, you could always put a piece of tape over the erasure tab and use them as mixtapes. Record over them.
I think you can get
heresy
one
there,
song
Carl.
per side, depending upon the length of the song.
Yeah, exactly. See, but the whole thing would be you'd look inside the cassette tape or the cassette deck, and you'd see a Timex Sinclair computer program cassette in there. It's like, what the hell? Just playing
Yeah,
music.
yeah, yeah. Okay.
Just put a ska label on it and you wouldn't have to do anything.
Well, in that case, we could send it back to Tim.
And my large collection, yes.
Scott tapes, yeah.
Well, CDs. I bought a bunch. I bragged once I had a good collection, but I had like 12. So I went out and bought a bunch. I think 200 CDs of ska.
Oh my gosh.
I tried buying most of them, about half, well, not quite half, but a bunch of them were bought from the bands as I saw them.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's cool.
Well, I was going to mention, that Ada kind of mentioned earlier in the chat that the hurricane flooded some of his basement, and he had some Timex boxes that got wet, and so he was kind of looking to.
Oh, Carl, garage. There are no basements in Florida.
Well, yeah, that's true because if he had a basement, it'd be flooded.
I think that's called an indoor swimming pool.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's true.
yeah.
But so I just didn't want that to get lost in all of this because I mean, if he's looking to get rid of it, then this is probably the place to try and get rid of it at.
And Ada, do you want people to reach out to you through the email list? What if he's still there?
Yeah, it looks like it's really laggy.
Oh, he's okay. Yeah, his video's not even showing.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because I know he mentioned the microdrive stuff, and I'm like, my hand went up. I mean, just automatic. It's just I hear microdrive in my hand, just for whatever reason is wired to go up.
Yes,
But
they could reach me via email.
So looking at the mailing list I have basically curated recently, Ricardo seems to be the closest person. He's in the same state. Next closest is in North Carolina.
I may have
No, Ricardo's not in Florida. That's just a mailing address.
1000 and probably ZX81.
I thought he was looking for someone to come by physically.
But that's just a mailing address for Ricardo. He's actually in Argentina.
Oh, okay. Well, the next would be North Carolina.
Charlie.
That would be Charlie Day, North Carolina. Hickory.
Yeah.
That's a bit of a drive.
That is a bit of a drive.
I think everything else is north of there.
Couple guys. So like I said, I kind of told Ada that I'll take a couple of things, and he seemed to be willing to ship that. But I mean, I'm sure he doesn't want to ship break everything out kind of like Tim did. I don't know that he wants to
Yeah.
do that, but it'd be a shame for it to just
Go
not to
away.
say he would throw it away, but yeah, I don't know.
All I can say is if you do ship, Pirate Ship is your friend. It's a website you can actually get fairly inexpensive shipping compared to the standard price at post office or UPS.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, true. Very true.
Oh, now he's back.
Hey, Adam.
Yeah.
Um, you mentioned that the single largest in-person
Oh,
Timex Sinclair user group in the contiguous 48 states met over the weekend.
At least in Albuquerque. Yes.
At
Yeah.
least in Albuquerque.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Would you
We did. Yeah.
care to report on that a little bit?
Well, yeah, I guess for those who haven't heard, there is a group of us who met during this group. Not magically, I don't know how. We live in Albuquerque. We get together every once in a while, do some things. And we got together 2 days ago. My wife had some things to do during the afternoon, and I said, I think I'm going to see if Carl and Ryan want to come over. And behind me, which you can't see, thankfully, is my office. And so we hung out in here. We chatted. We used some Timex computers. We looked at a lot of cool stuff that Carl was working on. Went out to lunch and hung out. I think Ryan was here for about 9 hours. Carl was here for like 10 hours, and I don't think we managed to drive each other crazy, unless you count some. Carl did not understand some stuff about doc files over lunch, and he's like, "No, I don't get it." And I was like, "Oh, this is such a typical thing that people in our mindset do. We're like, no, I don't know if that's correct, but we worked it out." So, um, but yeah, a lot of what we did was go over what Carl was just talking about, his system. We played some pretty cool games I had not seen before on that ROM, cartridge ROM system, although they've all been released on tape. Um, and
Well, that's the
yeah, some
point, Adam, is
what?
you take the tape and you make a cartridge out of it. So
Yes, I understand that. But what I'm saying is I could have tried them before, but
oh,
because now that
okay.
they're available as a ROM and they've been, what do you call it, ROMified, I
Mhm.
could try them. So. Yeah, we had a good time. Is there anything in particular you want to talk about? I actually would like to hear what Ryan and Carl want to talk about from what we did that day because I just chatted about just a few things, and I think my favorite part of the entire afternoon and evening was something I haven't really done in person before. Was Carl talks often about this disassembler that he likes that his friend in the 80s named Ray, someone he worked for, um, wrote for the 1000, and it was ROMified recently, and we used it to look at the 1500 and the 1000's ROM just on real hardware, just for the hell of it, because why not? Um, and yeah, we kind of stepped through the code by hand. Carl, why don't you and Ryan talk about that a bit? So give you guys a chance to chat, or give Ryan a chance to chat. He hasn't said anything this entire meeting. Ryan, are you there?
Ryan said he was going to be auditing this meeting, so he might not be
Oh, okay. Okay.
live with
All
us.
right.
Well, the whole thing is, yeah, I mean, I didn't work for Ray Kingsley. He's the guy that came up with Hot Z, is what we're talking about here. But Ray Kingsley did live up in Santa Fe, right? And I worked with Art Colgate with S Tech Automation, and he was the one that was he bought a bunch of 2068s from Timex when they closed out, and I worked for him. Basically that's who I made that diagnostic cartridge for right back in the 80s. And so we could test the 2068s because that was what was running the 3-axis milling machine. And Ray also developed the software that was running the 3-axis milling machine. So he did, he had a lot of other software too, not just Hot Z. I mean, he made a bunch of things, but I never met Ray, unfortunately. Like I said, he was in Santa Fe, and
Oh, I thought you guys worked together.
no, I mean, I've worked with him. He's the one that made my EPROMs. I didn't have an EPROM burner or EPROMs or anything like that. So, he's the one that made all that, and I think he made some cartridge boards and things like that.
Okay.
Um, so, and I know he made the circuit boards that went into the milling machine that the 2068 interfaced to. right?
Right.
So that it could control all the motors and everything and the solid state relays and whatever. But yeah, I never met Ray, unfortunately. So I guess maybe you didn't know that. But obviously, I said I worked with Art. I know I obviously went to Art's house and I know
Sure.
Art, but in Art maybe have met Ray. But I think Ray kind of to me at that time, I got the gist that he kind of didn't want to be bothered. He was kind of more of a, not very social.
That doesn't
That's
sound
just
like a computer person.
well, yeah. That's kind of just thinking back at that time. That's kind of what I got out of it was he didn't really want, because he had a PO box, right? I think he had a real address at one point early on, but then he had a PO box. So he really kind of wanted to isolate himself from
I see.
the whole thing, I think. And I don't know what he did as a real job, but he was a very articulate, electronics guy, I think, and programmer. From what I my feeling was because he made the PCB designs. So
Right.
come on, you got to be pretty good with that. So maybe his real job was, maybe he worked for one of the labs or for the government or something like that. Maybe I don't know. But I mean, what else? What else would you do in Santa Fe?
Ski.
Well, yeah, but the whole point of that was yeah. So we used the 16K version of Hot Z, which fits into the regular RAM. There's some other versions that we have, but they're made for like if you have a Memotech RAM pack, right? 32K RAM pack or a 64K, and it moves Hot Z into the upper memory so that you have more code space, right, in the regular RAM. But we were looking at the ROM, but we kind of got onto a thing where I was showing them how the 1500 looks for the cartridge, right? So it's because it's really really early in the code.
Right.
So it's basically we saw 00, and we saw the restarts, restart 8, and of course Adam found out that there's restart like 20, restart
Well, I
28,
knew there were
restart
other
30.
restarts.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I knew there were two,
Yeah.
but I didn't know exactly how many of them. So we were
Yeah.
kind of seeing where those were there
Right.
because
I brought out, I went to my other room and I brought out my programming books. But what was, I think, the most interesting part of this and how it kind of affected me because the three of us were just chatting in like mnemonics almost. We were just blah, blah, blah. And we knew what we were talking about. And I was like, what if my wife walked into the room? What would she be like? What the hell is happening here?
I think you had a stroke or something.
You joined a
But I'd
coven of
never
some
had a
sort.
conversation that in depth about that kind of technical subject in person, like through emails and like forums and stuff many, many, many times, but not in person.
well, I
So,
think if you worked or went to school, because I know I went to school, like I said, my junior year was doing assembly language on the IBM. So I kind of put myself back in that classroom, and I'm sure we were talking about, mnemonic, obviously, because
oh, I guess I should emphasize, I went to school and got a programming degree. And we talked about that kind of stuff, but
right,
not
okay,
about a
okay.
hobby kind of thing. Like we weren't talking about the ZX81. I mean, we were sitting in front of a ZX81 on a CRT TV, looking at the screen, pointing at it. You were pointing at it. Ryan's chipping in, pointing. We're talking. We're kind of getting all hyped up and excited about like what, like, about a jump. We're like, whoa, what is it? Where's it going? Let's go look at that piece of code. And I was like, I think I can just look this up on my iPad and just find this already commented as a file. And oh, yeah, who cares? You know? So yeah, it was a fun thing to do.
Yeah, we did do that, and of course another thing I guess maybe you didn't. Well, you did mention it in your thing is, I took the joysticks apart. We kind of saw what they
Yeah.
looked like inside, and we cleaned up the Timex one as good as we could because yeah, like you said, that foam disintegrated,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. And it had a broken piece too.
yeah, one of
Did we
the.
ever figure what the foam's function was?
Well, I know on mine, and when I had one back in the 70s or 70s, the 80s, it just helps center it, right?
Right. Because it's very
Because
loose and kind of sloppy.
yeah, it kind of helps
Okay.
center it and also kind of gives you some more resistance, I think, when you push it to the sides.
Keeps the cookie crumbs out.
Yeah,
Keeps the
probably
what?
that too. Cookie crumbs.
Oh,
Because I think maybe the Zircon ones or the Fairchild ones had something in there too, similar to that, some kind of round disc that had to be compliant enough for you to be able to go to the edges of the joystick, but not so hard where it stopped you from doing that, right? So, and it was a piece of black foam. Yeah, not, I just I'm just kind of thinking back then you never thought, well, that's going to disintegrate someday.
Yeah. Yeah.
And but anyway, yeah.
Yeah. In
So
the 90s, I had some TI controllers, and they were the ones that were for the TI 99, and they had a whole bunch of foam in them, and even by the mid 90s, they
yeah,
had disintegrated.
it's kind of ironic because sometimes people sell stuff or talk to me and they say, "What's new? It's in the package." And I'm
Mm.
like, "Yeah, I understand that, but it's it's from 1984, and there's certain things that just disintegrate over time. So yes, it is new in the package, but it doesn't mean that it's going to be like it was in 1984."
Yeah. Yeah. Cool.
Ryan, is there anything you wanted to add about what we did on Saturday? Are you there again?
No, no. I mean, yeah, we did a lot of stuff, mostly a lot of cartridge gaming.
Yeah.
But
It's funny, yeah. Ryan showed off he had his new not retro Pi, his new Pi computer, which is this big, and it's pretty cool. Ryan, why don't you tell us about that just for a minute? Because you use it to do all of your stuff for your
well,
system,
I just
Timex.
anyone who remembers, I had that Pi 400 that I had bought, I guess 3 years ago, and I upgraded to just the regular Pi 5 since I have the external keyboard I'm using anyway. Um, and I'm very happy with that. It's pretty cool. Um, it's quite a bit faster. Um, but I didn't get the 500 because that keyboard's not really that great. So I just went with the
And I
regular
mean, in
computer.
relation to to what we had discussed, like you said, Adam, when we went to lunch,
Yeah.
Ryan brought up the doc file,
Uh-oh,
and
here we are.
Oh
Oh
well,
no.
God.
no,
Oh no.
No,
well,
no, no, don't
and
mention
you
the dog.
No,
and
let's
Listen,
not
you're
talk
guys, we
about
only
it.
have 15 minutes left. We don't have time
Yeah.
for
right,
that.
and you're and you're right from the standpoint that I went to the emulator thing, and
Right, right, right.
but
Well,
but I
oh
just want
no.
to point out, hold on, I just wanted to point out that Ryan has a good point
Okay.
where a doc file is basically right, it's a virtual cartridge. So
Right.
anything that uses a cartridge virtually would be interested in a doc file. So when you're talking about, it's not just an emulator, right? So I just wanted to bring up the fact that we're talking about the TS Pico. Well, the TS Pico works with virtual cartridges. So a doc file is important in the TS Pico realm because it's working with doc files. It's working with virtual cartridges. It needs to know where to put the cartridge in the memory space, right? You don't get that information on just the AROS or the LROS header files. That doesn't exist there, right? The doc file tells whatever thing you're hooking this up to where to put the cartridge information as far as the memory space. So I just kind of want to point out that don't just go to the emulator thing like I did. That's a very good point. Where it's just, yes, you're right. It is a doc file, but it's a virtual. It's for any type of thing that's going to be working with this cartridge in a virtual type of environment.
Yes. And let's leave it at that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Let's do that, please.
We
Please.
could go 45 minutes on this. We have
Uh-huh.
gone
Right.
45
Well,
minutes on this.
I don't want to go that long on it, but I just wanted to, just to put that out there that, don't think of a doc file as just for emulation because it's not.
Yes.
Well, I know we're down to like 10 minutes. Is there anything we need to wrap up before we wrap up?
I want to show you, but I got to turn off my background here. None. Cool. There we go. All right. So this is a project I've been working on for a few weeks.
Mm.
Come on, focus, damn it. There we go. Okay. So this is not a full textbook on how to do Z80 programming. Instead, it is articles and mostly articles from newsletters and a couple chapters from some books that folks in the community have published back in the 80s and 90s on how to, how to do something in terms of machine language programming specific to the 2068, like how to program in those high res modes, in that dual screen mode. Well, actually, let me just look at the right.
Table of
So, and
contents?
then examples. So, for instance, there's a couple articles that talk about interrupts, and in particular, this interrupt mode 2, and one of the examples is a little bit of machine code that will auto generate line numbers while you're typing in a program. And another one will put a little clock in the upper corner of your screen. Couple
Hey,
things about.
David,
Go
you
ahead.
just made me think of another thing to put on my interface board as an RTC. So now your Timex can actually know the time and date. No, I'm just
Right.
kidding.
Yes, those
I'm
new
just kidding.
RTC chips. Uh-huh. Yeah.
While you're at it, could you put a countdown timer so that you'll know when your wife is going to come in and smack you upside the head? I could have used that back in the day.
Yeah. It's dinner. Dinner. I told you an hour and a half ago. Now it's cold.
Just 5 more minutes, please. So anyway, that's my. Sorry. That's my what do they call it? Proof copy. I've got to make a couple of adjustments, and then it'll be available.
And it's called what again? I'm sorry.
Oh, so this is machine language programming for the Timex Sinclair 2068.
Okay.
And like I said, it's not a Z80. It's not a book that teaches you, how to do Z80 programming. It's not going to teach you the things that are shared with the Spectrum, because there's so many Spectrum books, right? It's just, by and large, just the stuff that's specific to the 2068. So there's a 64 column, 80 column mode, code examples, that sort of thing.
Make it
Great idea.
more to make it more 80s centric. You could put it programming for the Timex 2000 series.
Oh yeah.
Instead of the 2068, because so many of those publishers didn't know what the hell the machine was going to be called.
Yes, that's true. That's true. Well, and then that would make it applicable to Jeff's 2068E.
Oh, wow.
Seeing as how that's
No pressure.
And so and Adam, the other question was, what are we doing next week or not, next meeting? One of the things that I thought we might talk about today, but we didn't get to, which is cool, is the Vintage Computer Midwest. So, a number of us are going, and we need to start coordinating, what kind of stuff we're going to be bringing. And so we need to put together a little list of, who's going someplace. We'll maybe build a Google Sheets or something. We can talk about that.
Yeah, that's probably better done off this meeting anyway, really.
Yep.
Well, it's good to bring it up at the meeting because it keeps it in, it keeps
it
fresh.
lets people know it's even happening if they just drop in.
Right. It keeps it fresh.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about that on our Sunday meeting.
So if you want to meet me, or you don't want to meet me, don't go. There you go.
That's exactly right. It's really about Adam and whether you want to meet the famous internet, personality that is known as Adam.
Or what did somebody call him? Keanu Reeves?
Oh gosh, I got that the other day too. Yeah, made me sad.
I'll just say it'd also be an opportunity, for any sort of exchange, since we'll all be together, of hardware.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
We might book a session. I know they have like workshops or sessions there. We could put a doc file session in there. Oh, sorry.
You just can't leave it alone.
Everyone else here is like, what is going on?
I have the salt. I have the salt shaker, and I'm just tapping it on the top.
Oh my god.
Oh. And I've been reaching out to folks to, folks from the past, Timex folks and other community folks to come in and talk to us. I haven't had a lot of success yet. I might have to resort to actually getting on the phone and calling people.
It could be interesting to try to contact the person who wrote High Res Hero.
Yeah,
Seeing
yeah.
if he'll want to join us.
Yeah.
I thought you did say you had a line on one of the women that were in town. I can't remember her name, but
So,
I think
there was
Sue
Sue Mahoney.
Yeah.
Yep, I've reached out to her through Facebook, and Facebook's terrible for that kind of thing. So I'm gonna probably have to find a phone number and call her.
What about contacting the guy who did Partial Pascal? He might still be around.
I have been trying to dig him up for a long time.
Okay.
And he's
near Chicago.
If I recall, his name is Michael Ambling. He also wrote
Yeah.
Immodula for the Mac.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't remember where that stalled out, but I'll try him as well. Yeah, because that, to your point, Tim, that would be fascinating. Partial Pascal is an absolutely bizarre environment for the 81/1000. It's like this 3-part world of strangeness.
How did he do it?
How? Why? What was he thinking? All those questions.
Is that
Sounds
a ROM?
exciting.
No, no,
it's software. It's an
Okay,
emulator. Sorry, it is a word processor. It is a compiler built into one.
But it runs on the 26 or the ZX81 software.
Yep, ZX81.
Yeah.
Okay. I think it's obviously got to run 16K.
Yeah.
So then I think it would compile. You would do editing, save it to tape, then read the tape, compile, and then send the result of the compiled to tape, and you can load. I'm guessing it's with the emulator, it's a pain in the butt to do that, but
yeah,
it got to be easier under emulation than on real hardware.
Not particularly.
No.
No, and so actually, we can talk about that more another time. But the manual for it, nobody knew where it was, and somebody on Sinclair's Unix World turned up a copy of it, and I hired somebody on Fiverr to retype it, and then it's available, but it doesn't really help. The system is so strange.
Okay, this sounds exciting. If we get the guy on, maybe we can finally figure out how it works.
Yeah.
Well, as anybody that develops and builds things, I mean, if you're a one-guy shop, sometimes you're not good at some of those other things, like making the documentation for your invention.
Right.
Yeah. So we have just like 2 minutes left. Why don't we figure out when the next meeting is, and
okay, let me look at the calendar here. I think
we know when it is. Third Sunday of the month, right?
Well, we'd like to make sure it doesn't get put off by whatever.
That would be the 16th.
The 16th. That's correct. February 16th, 2 p.m.
I got a calendar on the wall. I just look at
same bat channel, same bat time.
You can print. You can print one of those out. Ryan has a program for that.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
I've got a local realtor that every year for the last 25 gives me a free calendar.
See, I file those away immediately, Tim.
I use them. I got it sitting up. I always have it up here, so next to my desk.
So Friday is Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
Sunday is the meeting. Monday is President's Day.
Oh yeah, look at that.
And Tuesday is my birthday.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
Maybe we should incorporate that into this too, because I know at work somebody coordinates everybody's birthday. So yeah, in the birthday that month, they kind of, hey, happy birthday to these people, blah blah blah.
Was it Christian who said it was his birthday the
other day? Yeah.
Happy birthday, Christian.
Yeah, happy birthday, Christian.
Oh, belated.
Are we going to wear hats?
Maybe with someone on the 2040 with the 2040 printer can print them out a sideways thing that says happy birthday.
I have a banner program for that.
That's what I'm saying.
Ryan has a banner program for it.
It'd just be a waste.
I gave him all that paper on Saturday, so he's got to use it somehow.
Yeah, it's just
some
a waste of
hardware.
Just a waste of very expensive thermal paper, man. You don't want to do that.
Oh no, that stuff's you can get 114 millimeter paper on Amazon now.
No, I know. I was just kidding, but
Okay.
there's probably better things to thermally print than a banner.
I don't
Well, I
know.
mean, the only better thing it could be is a calendar.
Right.
Yeah,
Or-
I don't know. I could see
or-
a basic program would be good.
I suppose maybe some drawings of an at done in View 32, View 3D rather.
That was pretty cool. Yeah.
That was really cool.
Yeah.
Christian was going to
Well,
say
I
something.
think that's the end of the meeting. Or is Christian trying to say something? Christian, you
Christian?
there?
I was just saying if I had the right cable, I would have printed something up like that.
You just need more electricity.
Yeah, well, that power supply I have actually belongs to the computer here.
Yeah. Yeah,
At
yeah.
least
So
I
did you
have
get
a
the new?
spare.
Did you get the new power supply? I got shipped it out.
No, it hasn't come yet.
Okay, it's going. So I can't remember what else I threw in that box, but the printer, power supply, some paper. I can't remember what else I threw in.
Probably
Was it the
goes to
QL
Atlanta.
tapes?
Oh yeah, I threw some micro drives in there for you.
Yeah.
Cool.
They,
I actually have a set of
mic.
I actually have a set of micro drive cartridges. I'm not sure what to do with because it says apparently they came from Andy Radesky and that Bill got a hold of them, and apparently they were dipped in motor oil.
Oh, gross.
So there's like
Montana
about 6 of them. You pull them out, and there's still a little bit of oil left in there. So I don't know if I'd give them anybody because someone may then throw them into a system, and who knows what motor oil does. I don't even know what weight. So I don't know if it's 1040 if you got one to winterize cassette because your cartridges or so.
Yeah, those might be candidate for the trash.
Well, keep them around because they're a good candidate for just to show off.
Yeah, true.
Clean them up a bit. Don't use them, just show them off. I remember working with the guy a few years back, and I mentioned about software and cassette. He goes, "Huh, what?" Yeah, software and cassette. He goes, "That existed?" Like the guy was in his early 30s. I'm like, "You never heard of that before?" No. So I brought in 1000 tape to show him. Look, see, software on cassette.
That's funny.
So,
Did he even know what a cassette was?
A cassette, right?
I think he did because of music, but had no idea that computers used it for storing software.
Very funny. All right, gentlemen. Thank you. See you in 2 weeks.